We can just go ahead and start. And I just want to thank everybody for being here and welcome. And as I just said before, if you want to put your contact information in the chat box, like an email address, then Eliza can send you updates or a copy of the slides or anything that, because I think we'll probably have another meeting in August to just give information when it's time to start collecting signatures on petitions and things like that. So that would be a good way for us to be able to contact you. So we'll just start in and with the district mission, which is really, that's our purpose. And so we represent all students, and we want them to realize their full potential and appreciate the relevance of their education, be excited to learn, and be empowered for success. So that's kind of just our marching orders. And so we want to keep that in mind as board members. And then Eliza, the next slide. These are just characteristics of good board members, and I'm not going to read through all of them, and I think there's good information in all of these slides. So, you know, if you want to look through them after the presentation, that would probably be helpful so you can get all the details. But it's just important that board members have a desire to serve the community and are focused on all students in our community, that they value working with the team and can be a great team member, willingness to spend some time. It does involve some time, and then also just to do homework that might be required to prepare for meetings, and just to read up about various things that we might go over in board meetings or other meetings. And then just respecting the needs and feelings of others, being a good listener and a good communicator, and just ensuring that the school district as a business is well managed. So Eliza, we can go to the next slide. And then what do school boards do? So really the most important job of the school board is just to employ the superintendent. And that's really the only employee that we traditionally hire. And then we put the superintendent in charge of managing the district, hiring all of the required employees from there, and just making sure that the district is run based on laws and board policies. And the board is really in charge of gathering community values. So sort of just being in touch with the community and figuring out what the values are of the community, and then translating that into policies that then direct the superintendent as to how the district should be run. And so the things that board members need to keep in mind in that role is that they're charged with envisioning the future of the community's education, and that they should reflect the values of the community. They should develop an educational philosophy, establish some goals for the district, oversee the budget. So that's a big one, the money, adopt policies, and then do a review and evaluation of those policies. So look back and see, how is the district doing and how can we make it better on an ongoing basis? And then just advocate on behalf of students and the schools. So they're the link between the school system and the public, and they're also the leader in um, the community's public education, making sure that that's high quality and available for all students in our district. So you can go to the next slide, Eliza. The board superintendent relationship, there's different roles for each, the superintendent and the board. And the superintendent is responsible for implementing the policies that are set by the board, making recommendations to the board about personnel, curriculum, budget, vision, plan, security, and safety. The superintendent should be keeping the board informed about all of the items pertaining to the district. Develop and maintain an effective management system, delegating to all of the other employees of the district, hiring and firing those employees, managing them. Also, the instructional programming the superintendent is in charge of, the budget, which the board approves, but the superintendent and his staff create the budget and how our money is spent. And then just in charge of making sure that we have security and safety in all buildings. So those are the roles of the superintendent. The board's job is to, through their governance model, which is called Coherent Governance, we make policies that guide the superintendent and let him know how we would like the district to look. And so we have policies in these 4 categories. The board superintendent relationship, which just outlines how the board and the superintendent interact together and how we monitor what he's doing and how we give him the roles that he should have and the authority. The governance process, which is basically how the board does its work, so that we have some policies that outline how we go through our work. Operational expectations are the just day-to-day operations of the school district. So that those include the facilities, personnel administration, and all of these policies, and we'll there's a link further into the slides, but all of these policies are on our website in a on a software program, I guess it's called a platform, I guess, called Board Docs. And so it's pretty easy to find all of our policies and these are just being updated and changed all along the way, but our current policies are there. And then finally, the results policies are the academic results and student wellness results that we monitor and that we ask the superintendent to make sure that our students are achieving. And so those are the types of policies that we have. The board also, just at our retreat last summer, created our own board values. And so we just went through these different values as things that we find important and values that we use as we work together and as we work within the district. And that's integrity, innovation, continuous improvement, resilience, diversity, compassion, accountability, equity, respect, and excellence. So that was some work that we did with a consultant last summer, and I think, you know, kind of represents how the current board feels about what our values are. Policy making is just that, how we direct the superintendent, and all of our policies are written, and like I said, they're linked in board docs. They're easily accessible for school employees, parents, and the general public, which is important. The board creates board policies. There's also administrative policies that the superintendent creates for district employees, and those are two separate types of policies. So the board policies are basically just what we use to guide the superintendent. The implementation of those policies are the responsibility of the superintendent and staff. And then what we make sure that we do is every year, and we have a calendar that kind of keeps us on track so that every year we can go through and monitor each of those policies and make sure that the board is, or the superintendent is performing all of those policies and directives as we would like him to, and where are areas where we can improve, and giving direction in that regard as well. And the policies are really a reflection of the values of the community and the educational goals that the board sets. So we have a guest speaker, which will be entertaining, I'm sure. Linda, our CFO, is going to go through a little bit of school finance for you.
Thank you. I don't know if CFO and entertaining has ever gone together in the same area.
I think you can do it.
You know, as we, you know, as you guys move forward into hopefully wanting to run for the school board here at Aspen, you'll be thrown at a whole bunch of terms and acronyms, and it's overwhelming. So I wanted to kind of give my plug for the types of things that I say that when you hear, I want you to just, what you get out of today is, oh, that's finance related. This is something that that I need to talk to Linda about or understand a little more. So one is the Public School Finance Act, or School Finance Act, that is out there. We'll talk a lot about budget process, talk about that, those type of things. Fund revenues, which I know it should probably not have a D at the end of it. It's not fund, but it's fund revenues. And bond redemption fund, capital funds, and then the Financial Advisory Board, or it's FAB is what we like to call it. So those are things that are kind of in my wheelhouse, that terms that I use. This next slide is it's pictures, accounting in pictures. So when I'm talking about financial stuff, and when we bring about it in the schools, in nonprofit government accounting, things are done in funds. This is just a general overview of the type of funds we have. And I think of them as different silos and different ways to organize the way monies are received and spent. So general fund, special revenue fund, debt service fund, capital fund, and enterprise fund. Those are all high level. These we're flying at 50,000 feet here, but high level government accounting. So just know that when you hear these things and you become familiar, that you'll hear a lot about funds, so that are on there, and they all have special purposes and special rules around what can be included in those funds.
Linda, can
Yes.
I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Can you explain if there's a connection between the first three funds that you mentioned, the 2 slides ago, and all the funds on this slide? The fund, the bond, the fund revenues, the bond redemption fund, the capital funds, those, is there a connection between those 3 and the next slide?
Yes, there is. So the fund that's the big green one in the middle is the general fund, and that's what you'll hear a lot about and general fund, like what goes in there, what happens in there, that's the School Finance Act. So the first bullet on there, that's the revenue or the money that gets deposited into the general fund. And then when you have the tan colored ones to the side, the special revenue fund, the debt service fund, and capital funds, those, the four of them together are called governmental funds. So they get reported on the financial statements that we have all together, but they have rules like the special revenue fund. Whenever you receive something in on that, it has to be spent for an intended purpose of the fund. So we have specific things that we receive money from Aspen for. One of them that's kind of I think affects everybody is athletic funds. Like when a kiddo plays lacrosse, when they collect those fees for lacrosse, that has to be spent on lacrosse. So it has special rules, so it makes it a special revenue fund. The other two on the left, the debt service and the capital funds, debt service actually pays our debt. So we just sold some bonds. So the money that is collected through property taxes to pay the debt has to go into that fund and be used for that purpose. And then capital funds, when we sold the bonds, we got this big chunk of cash and it needed to be spent on capital assets. So that goes into capital funds there. So it has these rules. So you can't go and sell bonds to go pay teacher salaries. It doesn't work that way. It has to be spent on big, large purchases at their capital assets. So it's kind of the way in government accounting that we sort out our spending. Another way of sorting it out and putting it out there. Another point that I just didn't think of until just now. The purpose of a non-profit or government accounting is not to make money. It is to collect money from the taxpayers and spend that money. It's not to hoard it. And if you're hoarding money, you probably don't need to collect as much taxes. That's kind of the philosophy around it. So that's kind of what you think in the back of your mind on those four funds I just talked about. The red one off in the corner is where we account for our houses that we own. So the district owns 50 properties, currently, actually a little bit more now, 53 I think we're at as of today, 53 properties. That is almost like a profit that we collect rent from employees, and that rent pays the expenses of those houses. So that enterprise fund operates all on its own. It's its own little separate enterprise or company. That's how it gets its name, an enterprise fund. So I hope I didn't scare anybody away, but I'd love to, if you have any more questions on this, please feel free to call me anytime.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I'd love to talk on it too much, maybe.
There's a lot to be said about it.
Yeah.
So we'll just move on to how to prepare to serve on the school board. And you just should, and that's why we're doing these informational sessions. And I want everyone to know where various resources are, so that you can, kind of get up to speed on what all, what the school district is trying to accomplish, what the, who does what in the organization, the finance, just like Linda just told us about. There are various laws and regulations and that govern how school districts work, and then our local policies, and then just the board procedures of how businesses is conducted. And our website, we have a Board of Education page on our website. And so that has most of the links to this information. So it has a link to the board priorities and goals, which we also do each year. So those are just specific to that year and what is it that we really want to focus on and gain some ground on in that coming school year. So we meet in the summer and create those, and the superintendent creates a similar list. And so that's sort of our marching orders specifically for that year. So those are linked on our page on the website. Also, there are links to the minutes and I believe the videos from previous school board meetings. So just our regular meetings, it might be informative to watch a little bit of some of those, maybe not entertaining, but informative. And then also links to our policies are there. So just reading through policies would be great for if you can't fall asleep. And it also is probably a good idea just to skim them so you have an idea of what we've given as a directive to the superintendent. But another suggestion, and this came from CASB, but I think it's a really good one, is, and I haven't asked Dave about it, maybe we should have, but just to email our superintendent, Dave Baugh, and set up a meeting or a phone call or just maybe an email exchange if you have questions, but just to get an idea of, you know, what he feels like are some of the challenges and opportunities for the board. And I think that's a actually great suggestion that, you know, you have a little conversation with Dave. And then the Colorado Association of School Boards, it's linked here, the www.casb.org also has lots of information on that website as well. And there's a whole section on potential new board members. And so one of the biggest areas that I think people have questions about, it was the thing that I was nervous about when I first ran for the board, is just the time commitment. And Susie, you can chime in.
That 30 to 40, unfortunately, seems a little low for this year.
For this year, I would say for sure.
For this year. Maybe next year will be less of a time suck. I mean, it was important, but it could be low. 30 to 40 could be low. That's the only caveat I would say.
It also varies depending on we have board officers. And so what we've done is in the past is just rotate through each of the offices. So we have a president, a vice president, a treasurer, a secretary, and an assistant treasurer secretary. And the board president's role is by far the most time consuming. And I thought about that, you know, if we could divide up some of those duties, that might be a nice thing, because it does become, and part of it is just nature of the role, you know, everybody kind of wants the president in their meeting, or they would contact the president if they have comments, concerns, or questions. So the time for everyone is basically 2 board meetings a week. Susie has done a fabulous job of decreasing the time in our board meetings. So, I mean, we're getting it out in 2 to 3 hours rather than many more hours, which has been the case in the past. So that's really great. And I think that can continue. And I think it actually will probably, hopefully, be a little more streamlined in a year that's more normal than this past one.
And Susan, I think you said 2 meetings a week, but I think you meant to say 2 meetings a month.
Yeah, sorry. Don't want to give anybody that idea. Yeah, so 2 meetings a month, 2 regular board meetings a month. And then the preparation to before those board meetings, we have things to read that are posted on board docs. You can also look at that. Any of the agendas from meetings in board docs show all of the attachments that are related to an agenda item. So you can kind of see what things we read through, but it's, it depends on what's on the agenda, but budgets or monitoring reports, or, if we're changing a policy, the policies, things like that. And then just email correspondence is part of the time commitment, responding to stakeholders, responding among board members, although we don't do a lot of business through email because all of our business is to be done in public. But there's that time commitment, and then there's just additional meetings. There are committee meetings and events, and I have a job, and it gets busy during tax season. So I've been able to, kind of bow out of some things if it's during my busy time of year, and people are flexible in that regard too. So but it is, that is a concern, and that's something that I know everybody kind of always wants to know about. And then,
Excuse me?
See, I had
yes,
a
yeah.
question.
Hi, Susan, could I ask you a
Hey,
question?
Stacy. Sure.
So with regard to this, right now, the board is meeting twice a month on Tuesday afternoons. But in the past, there have been meetings at 8 o'clock in the morning, usually when there were ends reports that had to go on, but perhaps other times as well. And then I've been reading about this and trying to see where things stand at the moment.
Yeah.
I noticed that there was sometimes alternating between Mondays and Tuesdays. Now it seems to be on Tuesdays, and sometimes changing at the mid-year between 8 o'clock and 4 o'clock. Can you tell me about that and how those
Sure.
times and commitments, how those days and times are decided, how they're chosen?
Sure. Usually at the beginning of the year, or probably, I guess, at the end of a school year, we set the meeting calendar for the coming year, just so that everybody kind of can plan accordingly. And so each board looks at what's going to work best for them, and superintendent too, actually. So while we used to meet on Mondays and we used to alternate with the times, this board, it's easier for them to meet at 4 in the afternoon. So we've kind of landed on that. And then the Tuesdays came about because there was often a holiday on Monday anyway. And I think it was hard for administration to just jump right in on Mondays and have a board meeting. And actually anyone. Sometimes nice to just have a little buffer after the weekend. So we switched to Tuesdays at 4. And so that's kind of what we've planned for this coming school year. And if the majority of board members decide that, they would rather meet in the mornings or whatever it is, then that's certainly, it's allowed to change. We just try to kind of plan ahead and get it on the calendar so that people can see when we will. And we rearrange meetings sometimes if something comes up, but we try to stick to the calendar pretty closely. Susie or Eliza, do you have anything to add to that?
I was just thinking the mornings used to be because we wanted teachers to participate in work sessions. And this past year, we just didn't have time for work sessions, I think. And so we didn't feel that moving it to 4 was cutting into that time meeting with teachers, because there was no ability to meet with the teachers this year for work sessions. So it's kind of a fluke that we moved it to
All to 4.
Tuesdays, at 4 o'clock. And I think it was partly related to the COVID year that it worked out that way.
Correct. And I think adding to Susie and Susan, we also had a lot of feedback from staff and teachers that they enjoyed participating in the meetings. virtually, which came from COVID,
Mhm.
as we never met virtually before this. So I think that's something the board members took into consideration as well, is that staff really did enjoy being able to participate more at the 4 p.m. time compared to the 8 o'clock as they would be teaching.
And community
Yeah.
members, we got lots more participation. And so I believe that we are planning to continue to have online, like the ability to join the meeting online, even though, board members will start being in person for most meetings, I think, going forward. But that's been a really nice thing too, because I think it's easier for people if they just want to log in and listen or participate, that's a good way to do that. So we'll continue that online piece as well.
There have been a
Susan.
couple of, oh, go ahead, Anne.
Sorry. Oh, I was just going to say that I think in addition to the board meetings, I mean, I know that the numerous committees I serve on at the school district, multiple of those committees have a board representative at those meetings. And so I think in addition to the monthly school board meetings and the preparation, and I know that you guys are tailoring some of those back, but there's still a lot of committee meetings that you guys tend to attend, and that's a pretty big time commitment as well. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and staff office hours and graduation and just events as well. So yeah, those are definitely, and sometimes there's 2, 3, 4 of those a week. It just depends on what all's going on, and we trade around to see who can do what. So, but it
And
is
we
part
also
of the
try to
time.
be, yeah, and I think we try to be sensitive to if there are a number of parents or other community members who say they can't make 4 because they work till 5. We might, if we got a significant number of people saying we would prefer you to move it to 4:30, or maybe we would consider doing that. We try to balance the feedback with our own daily commitments, but we are flexible in that regard, Stacy.
How about the days of the week? I mean, at one point, I understand why you moved from Mondays, and that makes a lot of sense. But some of these committee meetings and other obligations, you may not know ahead of time what days and times those things will occur. Is there any kind of general guideline there, or you just figure it out as you go along? For people who have different kinds of jobs where your work schedule may be more or less flexible.
Yeah.
How does that
Yeah,
work?
we try to just kind of figure it out as it goes. And different board members, fill in for others. So, we kind of help each other out that way too. If there's just times when one or the other can't make it. So,
And Eliza is so organized that she's got us on a pretty regimented, like most committee meetings occur the same time each, the same day, the same time each month. And that's pretty much planned out pretty far in advance.
yeah.
Correct. We try to say, it's the first Friday of every month at 8 a.m. for the whole school year. So we would kind of try to field the group and the committee and see what's going to work best for them as a whole, because they are a smattering of different people who have different jobs and commitments.
And you're talking about that with regard to committee meetings, you mean?
Yes.
Like regular committee.
So like DAC meetings or, FAB or whatever the committee might be. Yeah. Any other questions about that?
Also just want to comment, I guess, too, that depending on the committee, they have different time commitments. The FAB meets every 2 weeks, while some other meetings like the DAC meet only once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And others will meet once a year.
And once a year, we also, as a board, sit down and kind of divvy up those committee duties. So it's based on, interest and time and maybe expertise. It's just kind of however we feel like we can divide up the duties best among the board members. So we kind of have a list of those commitments and divvy those up so that it's fair and it's doable for each of the members.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so board meetings are governed by the open meetings law, which means that if 3 or more board members are gathered and they're discussing board business, it's a public meeting and it needs to be noticed, and it needs to be, there needs to be an agenda, and it needs to be available to the public, either online or in person, and or both. And this is just so that because our work is of interest to all of our stakeholders, that there's no surprises. Like if we're going to start talking about having year-round school, for instance, which might be something that people are interested in, we would tell everyone that we were discussing that beforehand, and they would have the ability to give board members feedback, tune into the meeting. You know, we just want to make sure that everything is available publicly, and that everyone knows what's going on with the board. So there are some categories of board meetings that qualify for executive session, most of which, and those are not open to the public. Most of those things have to do with legal advice from our attorney, employment matters. Those are really the most common reasons that we would be in executive session. And we don't make any decisions during executive session. We just discuss those items. Anybody want to add anything to that, Susie, Eliza?
Yeah, we don't make decisions or take votes in
Right.
executive session. And just to follow up on the electronic meetings, if Susan and I email each other and then we forward it to a third person, that becomes a meeting. So we have to be very careful about that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Right,
if we,
right, Susan?
right. If the board, for instance, were all on an email chain and we were chatting about, you know, what our curriculum should be next year, that would be considered a meeting, and it could be acquired through the open meetings law by anyone in the public. They could ask to get the documents that show that whole email conversation, and that's all just because that you know, the public should be able to know what the board's talking about. Let's see here. So this is our meeting schedule that we, I think, are just going to approve at our next meeting, actually, tomorrow. And we just kind of decided we usually have similar dates. So we usually have, you know, 2 meetings in August, you know, starting August 17th. And this is about how our meeting schedule goes. And then we had just decided that Tuesdays at 4 seemed to be a good time for everyone currently on the board. And so that's where this schedule came from.
And there are no meetings in July?
That's right. We usually have a retreat.
Okay.
And that's to just set our priorities, and we do that sometime during the summer. And I guess we need to kind of schedule that, right, Susie? But that's the only thing during the summer, and then we start back up in August. And retreat sounds really exotic, but it's just at somebody's house.
Yeah. I do want to point out CASB December 2nd through 4th. So annually, CASB, Colorado Association of School Boards, has a annual meeting at the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs, and the boards typically go to that, and it's usually Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I believe, Susan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And all board members go along with myself and superintendent, assistant superintendent.
And I assume that board funds pay for that?
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a really beneficial time for the board to just be together. And it's also just, there's lots of good information from other school districts, and they have good speakers. And I think it's certainly a worthwhile.
It actually goes through Sunday morning. So Thursday through Sunday morning, and you can bring a spouse.
Mhm.
The school board, the CASB funds pay for a spouse as well.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably not for all the spouses' meals if they're not eating, but yeah, yeah, definitely. And Roger's gone most every time. Yeah. So, and board members also, you know, if they have work commitments or things that they have going on, you know, may attend some or all of those days, but we like to have people there for most of the time, for sure. Okay, so elections and eligibility. There are 5 board members. 3 seats are up for election in the fall. And then 2 years from now, the other 2 seats would be up. So we stagger those seats that are open. And a candidate must be a resident of the school district and a registered voter for at least 12 months prior to the election. We did have somebody one time who wasn't a registered voter and they weren't able to run. So that's something that everybody should make sure. And the elections are nonpartisan. And the process for getting your name on the ballot basically is, and I think, Eliza, so this means that the petitions are available on August 4th, is that right? So so there's a procedure that all candidates go through to get their name on the ballot, and that is to get a petition from Eliza. She will have those, and we'll send out more information before August 4th so that everybody knows how to get those and whatnot. But and get it signed with 70 eligible registered voters from that are in the school district. So, and we've, I think, traditionally encouraged people to get quite a few more than 70, just in case some of those people aren't actually registered or they're registered in a different place, or and you can't, that's another thing that happened at one point, you can't unstaple the petition because other candidates, I won't name any names, he ended up becoming a board member. But anyway, took apart their petition and had people taking it around to get it signed. You have to keep it all together and get all the signatures all in one group. So that's kind of important, I guess, to make sure people know about. Then there's some other paperwork. I think you have to, the affidavit. Yeah, so that's on the next page. The affidavit, I think Eliza would also help candidates. Once their petitions are signed, then you file an affidavit with the Secretary of State, and Eliza is our election official, so she helps with that. And then as candidates go through a campaign and they receive contributions and have expenses, then all of that needs to be reported on the Secretary of State's website, this online tracer program. And so that's for each individual candidate to do their own reporting for that. So, and that's just part of the Colorado statute that everybody has to report those things. And then any questions about just actually the election or campaign or anything like that? Or just any questions in general? That's kind of basically what we've got. You guys have anything to add, Susie, Eliza?
No, I think that was great. And just reiterating what Susan said, we'll have more information on the website as it becomes available. We're working closely with Pickens County to get and follow their rules with their elections as well. So we'll have a pretty clear timeline, and always feel free to reach out to me. I know some of you have already with any specific questions.
And I just would encourage anyone who has an inkling that they might want to serve on the school board. It's very rewarding. It is time consuming, but it really is, for me, it's been, really rewarding. And I think it's, it's a important and, impactful job.
I do
So
have
I'm
an,
excited that y'all are interested.
sorry.
No, that's okay.
The time delay with Zoom always makes you feel like you're stepping on the end of one sentence, and I apologize if that happens.
No problem.
If I interrupt you. With regard to policy governance, or they're calling it coherent governance, there was a time when, as I recall, it was called policy governance. Is there a difference? Is it something that's evolved? Is it basically the same thing, or what's your interpretation of how the school board makes change?
Yeah. Coherent governance is a specific governance model that two consultants that we have had come work with the school board in the past sort of devised, and it's more specific to school boards than policy governance, which could be used for any governmental entity, I guess, and even corporate boards for that matter. So we're currently operating under coherent governance, and so some of the names are similar to that, although we've changed just recently the names of some of our the categories of board policies. So it's the board, whoever is on the current board sort of decides how they want to, what their governance model is. And I mean, I just think the board would not do away with a governance model without having something else in place, to replace it, and probably having a consultant help with that, putting that in place. So, but it can be done. The board can decide, that they want to do a different governance model, and even the governance under the same governance model, the line between how much the superintendent just decides on his own and how much the board gives guidance can change all the time. Like board members, a board can write and pass policies all throughout the year, and they then change, what the guidance is for the superintendent. So that's kind of always in flux, just as the board evolves and as they want to give more direction to the superintendent, or less for that matter.
This year, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have a question, but I'll wait.
So I was just going to say that this year, for example, as along the lines of what Susan was saying, we can change policies whenever we want. We wanted our policies to be more user-friendly to the public. And so we changed, for example, the term results to goals. And we changed the term governance policy to just governance, and operational expectations just to operations. We just wanted to make it less wordy and a little clearer. We haven't changed all of those in our paperwork yet, in our website yet, but we decided amongst ourselves that we are going to try to make it more user friendly and clearer. And so we're not exactly using with those changes, we're not exactly using the terms that coherent governance uses. We kind of made up our own terminology to be more user friendly. So we're somewhere between policy governance right now and coherent governance, probably. John Hattie came up with policy governance. I'm sorry, John Carver. John Carver came up with policy governance, and coherent governance is sort of like Susan said, a subset of that specifically for school districts.
Okay.
And so we can kind of move along the continuum up and down that, just based on the terminology and who we are using as our role model.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Quick question. What are the most challenging aspects of being a board member?
COVID. That would be a big one. But I guess I think there's a lot of different stakeholders that frequently are asking for, and particularly, and I would say especially during this past year, they were asking for different things, and it was really hard to actually provide that for anyone. Everyone wanted their kids in school, and teachers wanted to be safe. So that piece is really magnified in the past year, but it's kind of always there a little bit. And but I think just making sure that you're listening, and that you don't forget that there are others, not just the most vocal, that you have to actually represent as well. And so that probably is the most challenging, is just making sure that you have the interest of every student in mind as you're making decisions.
And sorry, let's see. A follow-up question to that: are there annual needs assessments being conducted, or is there like a strategic way of collecting that information, or is it more just anecdotal from the community?
So, and I don't know if you mean needs and like as far as physical assets, or more like just the academics and whatnot, what the student experience, but probably either. The answer is that we are working on kind of finalizing what is the beginning of a strategic plan. And so which covers both the student experience and the physical plan. So that's ultimately going to be our guide. I also think that the priorities, as the board each year sets their priorities, those are sort of a needs assessment for the immediate year. So, and it just depends on what we have going on, year to year, where we want to focus those priorities. Susie, do you have a?
Yeah, and then the superintendent also comes up with his or her annual goals, which usually are aligned with the board's goals. So we have a lot of checks and balances for making sure we stay on track with all of our monitoring policies. And we, as far as, we change them as needed. If our goals change, if we all agree that the goals have changed, then we can kind of change mid-year. But we do have all of these annual evaluations, like as Susan mentioned as well.
And Susie, do you want to talk about the most challenging part?
Yeah, I agree with what Susan said, is trying to remember that we have to be, we're representing many different types of stakeholders. We're representing community members who don't have children in the school districts, but they pay taxes and they care. We're representing parents who do have kids in the school district. We're representing the students who usually are aligned with the parents, but not 100% of the time. and we're representing teachers who, you know, we all know that if teachers are not happy, the kids won't learn. And so we really want our teachers to be happy. And sometimes if there's a new direction that, you know, the superintendent feels we need to move in, and it may be unpopular among the teachers, that's very, very difficult. That's very difficult because we really want them to be happy and well cared for at all times, because they are the ones with the direct contact with the students and have the greatest impact on how our students do, which is ultimately our biggest goal. So it's, yeah, juggling everybody's interests and needs is I would say by far the hardest part. Preparing for meetings can be challenging. To read a 38-page document on something that we're not an expert on, and you know, maybe a 100-page document on something that we're not necessarily an expert on, just by virtue of what our own personal training has been. So there's preparing for meetings can be difficult, but it's usually fun to figure out that we learned something and we have something to contribute, even though we weren't an expert on that issue. But there's a lot of staying up to date and a lot of documentation, which is critical, but pretty hard.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you all so much, really, for your time and your interest, and it's exciting. I'm happy that we have some interested folks, and if you have any questions going forward, I'm happy to answer them. My website, my email address and my phone number, and Susie's as well. I assume she would be willing to answer any questions. So reach out, and Eliza's available too. So we're happy to talk with you.
I totally agree with everything Susan said. Thank you all.
I just want to say thanks to Susie and to Susan for their years of public service. I know Susan's wrapping up 2 terms, almost 8 years of service to the school, and Susie 4, hopefully running again. And this was a very informative session, and I just know the dedication you guys have had to our district, and it even shows just in this meeting of this information that you've passed on, that you're truly what public service is. So I just want to say thank you for that. So.
Thanks, Anna.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, everybody, we'll have a nice evening. We'll adjourn this meeting, and we'll be in touch. You know, we'll be sending out information in August about further election stuff. So
Okay, thank you.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks again. See y'all.
Eliza, do you need me?
No, we're good.
Okay.
All right. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.